Hiatus by 7:30 Lectures is brought to you by oneinmanila.com and the John Gokongwei School of Management, Sanggunian.
Hey guys, good afternoon. Welcome to day 2 of Hiatus by 7:30 Lectures, a series on entrepreneurship. Now today we have a very special guest today who'll be talking about entrepreneurship in the post-COVID economy. Without further ado, he's a very learned person and he was a former senator, Senator Bam Aquino. Would you like to say hi?
Hello everyone. I'm Io's favorite uncle. So putting it in there lang. Ako yung favorite.
Oh yes, yes. So thank you so much to my favorite uncle for joining us here. And we're really happy to have you here. We know you're very learned, very experienced in so many different fields. Field of entrepreneurship, field of service, field of governance. And we really appreciate your time here. So with me would be Zachary C, who'll be also interviewing you. So Zach, could you say hi to our audience?
Hi everyone. Nice seeing you all from this side of the camera again.
So without further ado, let's start with the coronavirus pandemic, which is a very relevant topic, as I mentioned. So right now, our government has been trying to respond to this coronavirus pandemic. Actually, not just our government, but the entire world was hit by this virus, and but obviously one virus affects all, but many governments have different responses to the virus. And I just like to ask you regarding your comments on the response of the coronavirus, and for you personally, what is the role of the government in aiding small, medium enterprises and big businesses as well?
Well, una, I think it's clear that we can do better. No, we can do better. Our numbers have not really gone down since the beginning of the pandemic. In March, a lot of countries, and including our country, we were all relatively on the same footing. No, in fact, some of them nauna na and they already had their spikes. No, but you could see that especially the countries around us, they were able to implement the needed programs, the testing, the tracing, the isolation. They were able to implement that, and their numbers started to go down. No? Ngayon, some of these countries have seen outbreaks again, or there have been spikes again, but they're coming from a place where their numbers already went down. We have not experienced that yet. No? So very, very broadly, with regards to the health side or the containment side of the virus, we really need to do better. And right now, we just need to look at the different things other countries have been doing, what the experts have been talking about, which is more testing, tracing, isolation, and really try to get a better handle on the outbreak. No? Because all of the problems that we have now with the economy and with SMEs, ang ugat niyan is the outbreak. No? So whatever initiative you want to do with the SMEs, you need to still refer to that, or you still need to address that. That's the root of a lot of these problems. So let me begin there. But that being said, even with all of the things happening with the pandemic, there are initiatives you can already do for our SMEs while you're trying to address the health side, or while you're trying to address the outbreak and the pandemic. So unang-una, our SMEs are really bleeding. No? If you look at the businesses, they're the most hit of all of the businesses in the Philippines. No? I mean, that's not very difficult to understand. Sila yung pinakamaliliit, sila yung walang war chest, or they're the ones without any savings probably, or their savings at this point are already depleted. They have smaller markets, smaller reach, smaller ability to market their products. So they're really the most at risk, and therefore they need the most help. No? If you look at our country, we're a country of small and medium enterprises, no? Micro, small, and medium enterprises. Practically 99% of businesses in the Philippines are micro, small, and medium. So bansa tayo ng mga maliliit na negosyo. No? And when we talk about micro to medium, that's a really huge range. That's your sari-sari store all the way to maybe a small chain of restaurants, or even a small chain that you can find in our malls. No? So that's micro to medium. But if you look at just micro and small, we're actually looking at more than 92% of all businesses. But now, the micro, the small, the medium, even the large are having a hard time. It's really now a question of sino yung may puwang, no? Who has the space to be able to survive this. Of course, the larger ones, you expect them to have more space. And if you look at the larger companies, some have started to lay off people already. But more or less, you can imagine that they will survive this and that they will still be there at the end of the pandemic. A lot of our SMEs are starting to close down. People are thinking about closing down. They're thinking about laying off people if they haven't laid off people already. And that is something that we have to contend with, because most jobs in the Philippines come from this sector, no? 60% or more. Probably before it was 66, I think now it's about around 60% of jobs in the Philippines come from your MSMEs. No? So if you really think about it, if you want to protect jobs, if you want to protect the majority of Filipino businesses, you have to focus on this sector. Now, ano yung kailangan nila? No? Kailangan nila ng cash. They need cash. Because without business activity, without economic activity, there's no cash coming into their businesses. And without cash, you can't pay your suppliers, you can't pay the people that you borrowed from, and you can't pay your people, more importantly. So, magbabawas na yan. Magbabawas na yan ng activity, magbabawas ng production, magbabawas ng tao. And that's something that we need to stop. No? And I think government, when it looks at what it should do for MSMEs, the number one challenge is really, how do I make sure that less of these institutions close down? How do I make sure that I'm able to support them enough that they can survive maybe the next 6 months to a year, no? Where economic activity is down, where things are very hard, where they can't sell the way they used to sell. How can we keep them alive, no? Kasi ang experience ng maraming MSMEs, dumudugo sila every month, no? They're bleeding. They're bleeding. And when you talk to entrepreneurs, especially those who have been in this business for some time, in their business for some time, or even those, you know, who just really, they like their business, no? They like what they do. They like the people around them. They're going to do their best to stay alive, no? And government needs to come in to help them keep alive. And that could come in guarantee programs. It could come in grants for the really smaller businesses, yung mga micro, pwedeng grants yun. It could be a purposeful buying. So meaning they really buy from local companies. No? And I'm going to get there later when it comes to what the response of private citizens can be. But there are initiatives that they can do to support our MSMEs. And it has to come fast. No? Yung Bayanihan 2 was just passed. No? But I think the specific programs are still dependent on the government institutions. No? Whether you have like a land bank, for example, or a DBP, providing loans to the commercial sector, to the commercial banks, where they in turn will have better terms for our MSMEs. That has to happen. That has to be accelerated because the needs are current and the needs are immediate. No? So our MSMEs need that space. They need that financial space to be alive. And it can come in different forms, but it has to come right away. No? That's number one. Now, number two, the private sector also has a big role to play because at the end of the day, businesses should not be in normal times, and these are not normal times, but in normal times, they shouldn't be propped up by government. It's not the role of government to prop up a business in normal times. In normal times, it's the market. No? Tayong consumers, tayong citizens, we need to help each other. So the push to really buy local is really important. No? Mahalaga to really look at your purchasing. For young people like you, Gen Z, no, not millennials anymore. No? For Gen Z, purposeful spending is something that's very, very present. For people of my age, it's usually just the best price. No, we are wired to think of what's the best price. Dun tayo sa pinakamura, right? But for your generation, it's purposeful spending is there, eh? And that needs to be spread to more people. How am I going to part with my hard-earned money? Am I supporting a company? Before the pandemic, it was, am I supporting a company that's environmentally sound? Am I supporting a company that doesn't have child labor? Am I supporting a company that espouses the causes that I espouse also? That's something that your generation is very knowledgeable about. But now, in a pandemic, it's already, how can I spend so that I can help my fellow Filipino? How can I spend such that yung kaibigan ko na noon nagtatrabaho sa isang call center pero ngayon wala nang trabaho at ngayon kailangan na magbenta ng pandesal or magbenta ng cake or magbenta ng bread, how can I support him with my money? So it's purposeful spending, and that I think is something you guys definitely a lot of business groups are trying to do, but a genuine movement from our youth to do purposeful spending, I think, is something that is very attainable. Kayang-kayang maabot. And we don't have to look far. I'm sure among your the parents of your friends, the people that your parents work with, your own classmates, a number of them, if they're not already in financial trouble, they will be soon. And a lot of them will try to get into entrepreneurship, and you need to support them. Because in your household, in Zach's household, I'm sure bumibili rin kayo ng pandesal. I'm sure bumibili rin kayo ng cake paminsan-minsan. I'm sure you want a sushi bake once in a while. Not every day, obviously, but once in a while. You might as well seek out your friends, family, colleagues, individuals that you know need the help, and help them, because they're not asking for charity. They're actually saying, I've pivoted. I'm fighting. I'm doing what I can to survive, and I need your help. And we help them through our spending. So dalawa yon. It's buying local, purposeful spending. Now, if I'm a big company, not just a citizen, so we talked about government, we talked about individuals. If I'm a big company, I need to look at my supply chain. No, I need to look at where I purchase, because big companies, yes, they engage in the market, but they're also the market. They're also the market for goods and services, no? Because if you're a huge company, if you're a top 500 company in the Philippines, definitely in your financial statement, maraming mga avenues dyan which you can utilize to help other people. You know, again, buy local, purposeful spending. The best example of that in recent years was Jollibee deciding to buy their onions locally. And that may seem like a small, in the Excel sheet, baka maliit na column or row lang yon. But that decision to purposefully buy from farmers directly in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, changed the lives of those farmers in Nueva Ecija, in San Jose, Nueva Ecija, where Jollibee's stability, their market share, their market dominance, suddenly a part of that was shared with those farmers, no, with that cooperative. And that's what we need now. Companies who are more stable, who are more likely to survive this pandemic, kailangan ibukas nila yung mga pinto nila, ibukas nila yung mga wallet nila, and support smaller companies and share that stability and value that they have with other companies as well. So inclusive supply chains, purposeful spending, and government support. No, again, it doesn't even have to be a grant. It can be a guarantee for loans from the commercial sector, who I understand now are probably not loaning as much because everyone's risk has really risen. But maybe supporting them through a guarantee, and then pushing for a moratorium on payments for a year. Hopefully, in a year's time, tapos na yung pandemic. I'm sure a lot of MSMEs will take that offer just to make sure that they survive and that they don't have to lay off their people. So those are things that have to happen. But guys, it has to happen today. Alam mo yun? Yeah. Urgent na to, immediate na to. And government, of course, will have its own, parang ano yan eh, parang, they say the Titanic, di ba? It's so hard to steer a huge ship. Agility is very important these days. No? So, we have to push government to come up with these programs as soon as possible. But the move for purposeful spending and that move for inclusive supply chains for businesses, that can happen already. That can already start, no? Especially yung movement for purposeful spending. That's something that can move already. And I'm hoping that, the people who are listening to us, the students who are listening to us, understand that they do have power. They have power with their voices, especially now online. They have power because of your age, and demographically, we're a young country and you represent the majority of the Filipino people. And they have power because they have spending power. No, and that spending power should be used wisely and used more purposefully.
Yes, you're right. Thank you so much for that input and your insights. I actually get a more comprehensive view of the role of government, but not just government, but because when we normally talk about the pandemic response, we think of the government, but there's also that aspect of, students, the market, small businesses
Students,
and people,
it gives us something to think about, right?
Yeah, it gives us something to think about.
To be more conscious about, especially in these troubling times. Yeah. But
That's good.
I guess on the opposite side, right, and less of the aspect of what businesses can do or consumers can do. There's this mainstream thought that economic recovery has a contrast with reducing COVID-19 cases. If we were to achieve one, we can't achieve the other. And there are a lot of media reports that have different insights and different suggestions on that. But how about you? What what would you say about this
Well,
thought?
alam mo, Zach, politically, you're always forced into a dichotomy. Diba?
Yeah.
You're either for this guy or for that guy, for this color or for that color.
Yeah.
You're either for this policy or this policy. You're either for America or China. You know, alam mo yun, parang you're always forced into a dichotomy. But if you look at where we are now, we cannot survive on a dichotomy. Hindi tayo makaka-survive kung health tayo to the detriment of the economy or economy tayo to the detriment of health. It's just not, it's great for debates, it's great for TV, it's great for slogans, but it's not good for where we are right now because we need to improve in both.
Yeah.
And ang nakakaasam dito is that other countries have shown that they can improve the health side and open up their economy.
Yeah.
You know, with a cooperative citizenry, with thoughtful leadership, with strict implementation of sound rules, you know, it can be done. And again, this is not March. We're not in March na parang lahat tayo nangangapa. No, we're already in August. Diba? And in August, things have happened. Countries have gone up, have gone down. You know, I think in our region, most countries, I think maybe Indonesia and us are roughly in the same boat, but most other countries have actually gotten a handle on it. Most have actually started to open up their countries already. You have friends in other countries now. I have colleagues and relatives in Singapore, in Canada, in Hong Kong, and we hear their stories that yes, there are changes. Yes, there are people need to adjust, but more or less things have opened up again. Diba? Their economy is up and running again. Maybe not to the same level, but to a certain extent, it's there again. And their cases have gone down. So, what makes us think that we can't achieve what these other countries have achieved as well? We can achieve that, no? And again, you know, this is one of those times copying is good. Diba? We should copy what they're doing. We should take a close look at what they're doing and try to see why we're not doing it here or what we're doing wrong. Diba? So we cannot be forced into a false choice. Para, let's open up the economy pero, you know, maraming will allow a lot of people to get sick. Or, wala tayong, we kept the cases down pero lahat tayo or 40% walang trabaho. It's not a choice. You know, it's not the right choice. It's a false question, no? It's a deceitful question, really. So we really need to see, one, is how can we improve on both? And two, why have other countries been able to do it and why haven't we been able to do it? Because we've had the longest lockdown. Relatively, masunuri naman yung mga tao relatively. Diba? I mean, compared to, say, America, no, na you really have stories of people going to parties and concerts and really, you know, turning their backs on science and evidence, no?
Yeah.
Sa atin, hindi naman ganun eh. Diba? People are afraid. They're afraid to go out. They want to follow the rules, but they also know they have to work.
Yeah.
So, you know, we cannot be forced into a choice, diba? Na pinipilit ka to choose one or the other because one without the other will be detrimental to our country. So we need to be able to choose both. And again, babalik tayo, thoughtful leadership, proper implementation, clearer rules, copying other countries, getting help from other countries, I think is really important. Hindi pwede na yung mga Pilipino naghihintay na lang na dumating yung vaccine from China, from Russia, from America, from Europe, from wherever. If everything stops until that time, you know, we will be in ruins, no? So ngayon pa lang, you know, try to look at how to improve both, and that's really what we need to do. And along the way, as government is doing, as we're also engaging with government, no? Sometimes it's a criticism, sometimes it's a congratulations, but you know, lately it's been criticism lately, but hopefully they'll be able to, you know, implement better plans. And citizens have to do their share also. Kasi it's not enough to just wait it out, no? There are a few people who can wait it out. They have the privilege of waiting it out, but for most Pinoys, they have to go back to work. Diba? For most Pinoys, they need the support now because where they live is not conducive for their health. So kailangan ng suporta ngayon na. No, hindi na pwedeng hintayin pa. And we all have a role to play. Now, for those who do have the privilege of waiting this out, there are things that we can do. No, there are things that we can do to be part of the solution as well.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I see the relevance of, that sort of false dichotomy, that fallacy in the debate, and it's kind of appalling since everything's become so politicized, and it's come to the point of, it ends up like risking lives, whether it's economically or, in terms of health mismo. But since now I feel like we're living in a time where it's really life or death talaga, and with that you really see the urgency to go past the politics, and to actually to actually strategically implement policies that will allow people to be more cooperative, and to actually flatten the curve. So thank you for that. Thank you for those insights on the matter. Next, I'd like to move over to a sort of long-term approach to how we should look at the coronavirus pandemic. So we chose you because, again, you're very much learned in governance and economic matters. So with that, what lessons can the government, the private sector, and the Filipino people take from this crisis after the coronavirus?
Alam mo, after it's really, I mean, we all want it, but it's so hard to imagine pa the after, no, since we've been in this for so long, right? Siguro hindi pa ako ready for an after, but for a during. Okay, for a during, meaning we're in the middle of it, no, and people have been saying we're gonna be in this maybe for another 6 months pa siguro at the minimum, right?
Yeah.
I think one is, we should not allow ourselves to think that we are incapable. No, the Filipino people are very capable. We should not believe na parang, wala tayong magagawa, inutil tayo. We're a very capable people. We're a very madiskarte ang Pilipino. Naghahanap ng solusyon. I gave a talk yesterday about how Filipinos are natural problem solvers, di ba? Maybe because throughout our history, napakaraming problema. We've just created that culture of being so madiskarte na if something faces us na problema, we all just automatically try to fix it, no? We need to bank on that. We need to look at the better parts of our culture and the better parts of our nature and draw on that. Not the worst parts, no? Not the parts that are defeatist. But we have to look at that aspect of the Filipino to be able to get out of this. No? The fact na madiskarte tayo, the fact that at the end of the day, there is a strong community spirit, strong family spirit. Pinoys are very hardworking. Parents are willing to do anything for their children. We need to bank on that. No, we need to be able to look at that aspects of our culture and say, how do we use that? How can we use that? How can we use that bayanihan spirit? How can we use that selfless spirit that's in us, no? Sometimes parang feeling mo wala, but it's there. It's somewhere there, di ba? How can we bring it out, and how can we use that to fight a pandemic, which is probably one of the most difficult things to fight in the longest time? That's what we need to do now, because it's only in times that Filipinos have come together that we've been able to really achieve, no? That we've been able to do seemingly impossible things. It's when we come together and really bank on that, they say the better angels of our nature, no? The aspects of our culture that really bring us up rather than bring us down. And I think leadership here is very important, no? And we're not just talking about the president, but leadership in companies, leadership in families, leadership in churches. It's really important that across the board, right now, we look at each other and say, kaya natin to eh. Other countries have been able to do it. Kaya natin to. At the minimum, we can improve from where we are. No? We can do better, and less people will have to suffer. Less people will have to be sick. Less people will have to be financially ruined, no? If we're able to really come together. And, you've seen small pockets of it. No? Yung batch ko, I'm 25 years after high school. Okay, so 25, it's a long time, man. 25 years. So we're the Jubilee batch for this year.
Okay.
And early on, maybe as early as a few months ago, the batch decided to forego the homecoming and do a homecoming and really focus all efforts to support poorer communities, frontliners, raise funds for them, do different projects to support all of these groups and individuals and communities who are having difficulties now. And I felt so hopeful that my batchmates would say, you know what, forget the homecoming. We can do a simpler, maybe a virtual one na mas simple, but all of that money that we would have spent, on a great party or on prizes, we're gonna channel this to something more productive or more relevant during these times. No, when during the first part of the pandemic in March and April, I was part of Kaya Natin. No, it's a group I'm still part of now, and with the OVP, we were able to raise about 60 million pesos, which most of it was PPEs for frontliners in March and in April. And we ran a campaign that was largely online. And we saw over 18,000 people support that initiative. No? 18,000 Pinoys donating out of their hard-earned money to support our frontliners. So makikita naman natin there are pockets, no? Pockets of individuals and groups who are willing to share, willing to give, willing to do what needs to be done to help our fellow Filipinos. We need to bank on that. Yun yung kailangan nating sandalan. Diba? Let's not draw upon the darker parts of our culture, no? Of violence and fear. No, let's try to look at, how can we work together? How can we really lift our country together? I have a batchmate. Hindi naman siya part of an NGO or hindi naman siya part of a social enterprise. In fact, he works for a big corporation, but he's a tech guy. And his family, during the first part of the pandemic, would 3D print masks and shields for our frontliners. Tulong-tulong siya tsaka yung mga anak niya. And they would do that just every day because they're home. He used work from home anyway. So sabi niya, sige, habang nagtatrabaho ko, my 3D printer here on the side will be put to good use. And they were able to provide hundreds of these PPEs for our frontliners. That's just one family. No? So, whether it's that father doing that activity with his children or a business owner fighting tooth and nail to stay alive, doing everything they can to stay alive so less people will be laid off, or even large institutions like Ateneo, through another relative of ours, si Father Manuling and the Tanging Yaman Foundation, EO, they've raised hundreds of millions of pesos. They've provided, he just gives me updates on Viber, no? And once in a while, are you in that chat? So once in a while, lalabas na lang, we gave like hundreds of bags for jeepney drivers in UP Diliman. We gave, all of these different things. And that's coming from real people. That's not coming from one rich person. That's not coming from one corporation. That's coming from hundreds and thousands of Filipinos who want to help, who are in the most difficult times still choosing to help and still choosing to fight for our fellow Filipinos. So, alam mo yun, parang yun yung kailangan ma-harness. And if government is having a difficult time harnessing that spirit, then we need to harness that on our own. No? In our schools, in our youth organizations, in our, by the way, talking about youth, I'm super daldal. In our youth organizations, talking about youth organizations, si Tayo, no? I think you guys know Tayo, right? In 10 Accomplished Youth Organizations. It's a yearly search for the best youth organizations in the Philippines. We usually get about 300 entries per year, no? There was a low one year, I think there was like 120, but usually you would average about 200 plus entries. For this year, completely online search. We just put out, it has to be COVID related. No? The activity for this year's search needs to be COVID related. We got over 800 entries. No? Which goes to show there are so many groups out there, new groups that have been formed to try to address these problems. So, yun yung kailangan nating sandalan. And hopefully, post-pandemic, we don't forget that. We don't forget that leadership matters. We don't forget that we are capable of helping each other. We don't forget that, at the end of the day, we need to bank on ourselves, no? Of course, have that faith in God, but at the end of the day, also bank on ourselves that, we can get through this together.
Yes. Thank you so much for those words. Those are messages that people need talaga.
Yeah, like it's the relying on each other and building upon the culture that the Filipinos themselves grew up on that will be able to help us like somehow achieve what other countries have shown is already possible now, right? So I going to the next topic though, I guess on a more personal side, like when Eo told me that we were interviewing you, I ran a Google search, right, and I encountered this foundation Happinoy, like Eo told me a while ago, and I guess I'm curious about it too. So would you be able to share with us a bit, like what is the Happinoy program, right, and what was your vision for social entrepreneurs while managing said program?
We started Happy Noi in 2006. We started talking about it in 2006. It was formalized the year after. And, it was very different at that time, no? Because nung panahong yon, hindi pa talaga sikat yung social enterprise. No? Even the term itself was not widespread in the Philippines yet. In fact, when we started Happy Noi, we weren't calling it a social enterprise. No? We were just calling it a business that helped people. No? Eventually, the social enterprise movement would really explode globally and also here in the Philippines. Now I think there are classes that teach social enterprise. No, there are competitions that award social entrepreneurs, and at that time there just wasn't any of that. I remember, we gave a talk in like an NGO conference, and the NGOs were saying you can't do that. You have to choose. You're either a non-profit or a for-profit. Again, back to the dichotomy, diba? Parang pinipilit ka talaga to be one or the other. And we were saying, no, businesses create value, and as long as this value is shared or this value is created for, the right audience, then you can use business as a way to help people. You can use business. In fact, it's even better because the multiplier effect of business, the fact that you're creating and sharing value, is important, no, and that needs to be supported, no. So Happy Noi back then was based on microfinance and new business development and a lot of training, financial training for sari-sari stores. So our first partners were the multinational companies, were the telcos, were the FMCG groups, and we were doing our best to help the Happy Noi nanays who own sari-sari stores do better with their businesses, no, earn better, have more income streams in their sari-sari store business, utilize that sari-sari store for more purposes, and allow the family of the nanay to really earn from it more. So it was it's a very, very good experience for me. I learned a lot. No, I learned about how you can actually get out of poverty with the right support. How a nanay who probably didn't even finish high school can send her kids to school through a small business with the right support. And I guess I will qualify that with that right support, no? With financing opportunities, with education opportunities, with access to companies, access to the market. As you were unlocking each of these steps, si nanay was stepping up and saying, I can do better, I can be better, I can run my business better, no? So that seed was the seed that was really important for me joining politics, because I've been people have been talking to me about politics since after college. Okay, so I was 22, 23 years old. People were talking to me about politics already, but a part of me felt wala pa akong K, no? Kulang yung experience ko, kulang yung karanasan ko, kulang pa eh, 'di ba? But those 7 years in Happy Noi, working in rural areas, working in peri-urban areas, working with poor communities, working with the microfinance sector, really trying to understand how our nanays could get out of poverty step by step, no? Be on a path to prosperity where their children would have a better life than them because of better opportunities through education and better jobs. After 7 years, parang I felt that experience needed to be expanded and needed to be made into policy. And that's one of the reasons why I ran, no? So, sobrang important nung time na yon. And I'm back. I'm back in that social enterprise world. I'm back in the development world, doing different projects again, working with the microfinance industry again. Ngayon naman, bit-bit ko naman yung experience ko from the Senate, which is of course policy making and implementation of these how these projects and programs are implemented, no? So it's like a symbiotic thing, no? Parang that experience helped me in politics, and the political experience now helps me when I'm back in the development work. So I wouldn't trade it for anything, because those years, kami ni Mark, no, Mark Ruiz was my business partner then, it's my friend from high school. Many times we began, wala kaming office. Our office was the Starbucks on Green Hills, the one outside the church.
Yeah.
I would buy my little coffee and sip it little by little para hindi ako nakakaya dun sa security guard, di ba, na hindi kami papaalisin. But, I'm sure they saw that we were spending too much time there. Yun yung office namin. We were mobile warriors. We had our laptops and our phones, and that was it. We would go, we would have office in different places. Eventually, we would put up Happinoy, work with the microfinance sector, get invited to the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. It really opened up a lot of doors. So whether we were, presenting this model abroad or sharing the model under a mango tree in a center meeting in a microfinance institution's, backyard office, it was really so, parang sobrang siyang fulfilling for me. And very few politicians who get to a national level can really claim that they've worked in poorer communities, no, and spent years there. No, not a lot can. No, so I think that perspective was also very important. It grounded a lot of my laws and a lot of my decision making. And parang nagkaugat yung pamumuno mo, nagkaugat siya. It had roots, no? May pinanghuhugutan siya because of those years. And I have to admit, some might say, oh, those were difficult years, hirap na hirap ka na ba doon? We would go to Laguna maybe 2 to 3 times a week in the first couple of years. So yes, it was hard, but it was so much fun. Honestly, I had so much fun. It was a great time. It was really a great time. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, because a lot of the laws that I made, and even now, a lot of the ideas that I have in terms of development come from those times. And now that I'm back in the sector, it's like, parang nga siyang looking at things again with fresh eyes again. So that was really a good experience. And for those who do want to get into social development or politics, spend a few years there, where you need to be. Spend a few years working with people, and there are many different ways to do it. You don't have to work in an NGO. You could be in a business that deals directly with poor communities, or you could do it on the side as your volunteer work, but you need to spend time there. You need to understand how these things work in that space, so that when you do get to a position of more influence, may hugot ka eh. Alam mo kung saan ka humuhugot, no? Hindi siya theoretical. And a lot of the laws that I opposed, I felt were good laws, but were good laws theoretically, but in practice, they really wouldn't work. And yung hugot na yun is really important, no? I'll give you an example. Government pushed for the modernization of the jeepneys, no? In itself, that's a good thing. Like, we want our jeepneys to be modernized. We want them to be clean. We want them to be good for the environment. But the way that they set it out was just impossible for your jeepney drivers to achieve, no? So that's an example. Maganda naman yung gustong gawin. Maganda yung hangarin. It's a good thing. But it just was impossible for the jeepney drivers. You cannot expect them at that time, parang they had to load like more than ₱1 million for a new vehicle. It's just not real to them. Or they had to change in 6 months. And that timeline was just not real to them. And the only way that you would have that perspective is if you really were with them and really tried to understand them, spoke that language, diba? And tried to really take the time and effort to understand ano ba talaga yung problema dito. So, the opposition was very nuanced. No? Hindi lang siya, we don't like this. It was, okay yan, but give us a chance to achieve it. No? We do want to achieve that as well, but don't make it impossible for us. Make it possible. And the suggestion was something also, like the suggestion we gave was, I think, also very doable. No? Of course, all of this is moot because of the pandemic. No, I don't think they're pushing through with it anymore. But the suggestion was, if you compute how much these jeepney drivers were paying as boundary every day, if the payment to the bank for a new vehicle could match that or was even lower, they would take it on. But if what you're asking them to pay is 1.5 times that of what they're used to paying, wala na silang kikitain. They cannot do it. Di ba?
Yeah.
So, the metaphor, or the, how do I say it? The saying, where the rubber meets the road, di ba? Where the rubber meets the road. Sometimes yung hindi siya nag-meet sa road no? Hindi siya lumalanding ng maayos So, that experience in Happinoy helped me to have that perspective na you have to see things through. Hindi lang siya pwedeng all theory. Kailangan all the way down. Makita mo how this will be implemented. Makita mo how this will affect people. And that Happinoy experience was really the one that drove that home for me.
Yeah. I guess it's always about seeing things from the perspective of the people you want to target now. Yeah.
Yes, that's the most basic thing, I think, for leadership, no? The empathy. But siguro as an entrepreneur, you also have to think of the systems, no? Kasi yan, pwedeng 1:1 lang yan But you also have to think of the system. How one will affect other groups, other institutions, other entities, and how everything needs to be all connected. No? For example, nag-GCQ tayo, binukas yung mga malls. Great. Businesses, you can open again. Pero people didn't have ways to get to the malls or get to their workplaces because wala namang public transportation. Di ba? So, yun yung examples ko of how working in Happinoy forced me to, not just to look at the nanay's perspective, but also to look at the perspective of the system, diba? The ecosystem, the business system, how things connect to each other. And I think, for the leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow, which are you guys, no? Hindi na pwedeng binary thinking Yung it's just me and you or just opposing things lagi. Things are very complex. Things are very nuanced. No? It's a network. It's not just 1:1. It's not just ones and zeros anymore. It's a network. And we need to have people who are willing to think that expansively to be able to address the very complex problems that we have.
So, as a senator, what aspects of entrepreneurship did you focus on, and what policies did you enact in line with those advocacies?
Well, I guess what I learned in Happinoy was really the basis for a lot of our laws that we were able to pass before, no? By the way, now I'm back in the social enterprise world, but just to talk about this time in the Senate, in the same way that we believe that if you unlock opportunities for our countrymen, kung mabukas mo yun, they themselves can lift themselves out of poverty. Kaya ng Pinoy to be able to get themselves out of poverty as long as you're able to unlock these doors, no? And a lot of opportunities are shut out of our countrymen simply because they were born poor or they were born in a certain socioeconomic class. So, hindi totoo na tamad yung Pinoy or hindi magaling or pasaway or all of that. A lot of Filipinos, a lot of families are willing to work and really do well. A lot of students are willing to study, get an education, get a better job. But the hurdles are just too much. And you need government or other institutions to unlock those hurdles, no? To take out those hurdles, to unlock those doors. I think you get the metaphor, no? So, nakita namin yun sa Happinoy. A sari-sari store owner, if with some support, some financing opportunity, some new business, a lot of training, could eventually send her kid to college, could actually, be able to provide for their children. Not a extravagant life by any means, but enough to be able to send her kids to school. No? So kaya naman. So that belief became the foundation for the Senate 6 years, no? Which was, what opportunities do we need to unlock such that more Filipinos can move up and get out of poverty? So that became the central focus of all of the laws that we passed, whether it was the Go Negosyo Act, which supported your MSMEs, or the Free Education Act, which gave free college to students in state universities and colleges, the competition law, which tried to level the playing field between your small enterprises and your big enterprises, no? And so on and so forth. So parang yun yung central thread sa kanya. If you allow Filipinos to really you allow them to bring their own prosperity, no? Not through dole-outs, but by allowing them to, by taking away all of these obstacles, which are structurally in place because of our history and because of, the structures we have in the Philippines. If you're able to break that down little by little, people will be able to get there on their own. So, nandun yun. And a lot of it was from learning from my time in social enterprise. Kasi sa Happy Noy, yung mga sari-sari store owner, yung mga nanay ng Happy Noy, we used to call them the Happy Noy nanays, kausap mo sila every other day, every week. You get to learn about ano yung pinagdadaanan nila, ano yung mga pain point nila, and ano rin yung mga pwedeng gawin para matanggal yon. So it became very important going into the Senate, I think. In fact, I would even say I would not have been prepared to be in the Senate without that time working in the communities. Parang kung wala yon, I felt wala akong karapatan to run. But having those 6 or 7 years really working in the communities with microfinance organizations, parang I felt na, okay, I need to be able to take this to a higher level, which of course became policy or laws. And that's why I ran. And that's why the laws that we chose to push were those laws.
So again, thank you very much,
Thank you,
Senator Bam Aquino, for joining us here today. We're really happy to have had you here. Zach, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I really learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the next steps of our country. And as you mentioned, how we'll be able to achieve what other countries have already been able to achieve. So I hope our audience learned a lot too. And just the same, thank you very much for joining us today.
thank you for inviting me. And when Ia told me about this project, I thought it was really cool that you guys are, doing something, doing something. You know what I mean? Congratulations and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.